I love Sundays. It's the only day of the week that I get to visit my dad's old man. At least that's what he calls him. I just like to call him Grandpa. He's fairly old, but that's an advantage in my book. Every time I see him, he manages to tell me a new story about the golden days of his long-lost youth. Oftentimes, things that I'm learning about in school are things that my grandpa witnessed with his own eyes. Therefore, instead of me reading my textbook, I often go straight to the source. Last week, my social studies class covered a unit called The Fight for Civil Rights. They defined civil rights as the right of citizens to have social and political equality and freedoms. I was up until this point only somewhat aware of what the situation for the people of color was in the 1960s, so I figured I'd ask my grandfather the next time I saw him. That Sunday morning came quicker than I thought. I had done some research on my own, so I had some key questions to ask him. It was still dark. I bought him a cup of coffee and one for myself, along with 2 ham sandwiches. We sat on his porch. I enthusiastically began my interview. "Hey, Pops. So in school we've been talking about discrimination," I paused dramatically to read my notes, "which is defined as treatment or consideration of, or making a distinction in favor or against a person or thing based on the group, class, or category to which that person or thing belongs to rather than on individual merit." I thought I sounded smart. My grandpa looked at me over the top of his glasses, which immediately made me feel a bit silly. He stopped me gently and said, "Boy, I haven't talked about those years with anyone since they happened." He took a long pause, so the moment became sort of awkward. I thought I saw a tear rolling down his cheek, but it was dark, so I don't know. Then he spoke up again. "Those were some terrible years, son. I try to forget them. Racism, which is discrimination based on race, was rampant. There were signs everywhere designating where blacks were prohibited from going. Blacks were treated horribly, oftentimes beaten and mistreated, fired unreasonably, called tremendously offensive names. And all these were the outpouring of the idea of segregation, which is the institutional separation of ethnic, racial, religious, or other minority groups from the dominant majority. But we did not respond evil with evil. Peaceful protests were our stronghold. In other words, we would organize nonviolent demonstrations as a way to show those oppressing us that we would not stoop down to their level. After many years, progress was achieved. Our nation is not there yet, but we're definitely moving forward."